Well, we'll wait a few minutes so they can get in. But I just wanted to say we were talking earlier, and Brother Ricky and I were at a conference this week, and it was mentioned several times about churches of all different sizes, everything from mega churches to smaller churches. People in the churches didn't really know anything about Jesus, and some of them didn't even know how to get saved. And I guess you kind of know that, but to hear it and hear it across the board. And so this morning, let's just recognize Jesus and give him a big hand clap. Amen. Come on. I mean, really, that's what this, to me, that's what this training is all about. I want to, and I'm pastoring a church also, even though I'm the bishop. Uh, but, but I want to do everything I can to be as sharp as I can for Jesus, because there's a lot of folks out there that need to get saved, and a lot of them that even if they've crossed over into salvation, they really need the Lord. I was actually preached this past weekend about Nehemiah. And you know, the wall of Jerusalem, the Jews had been in captive. They came back. The first thing they did was build the temple, which was good. They built a place of worship. But the walls were, of course, in bad shape. And Nehemiah went to rebuild the walls. And I began to think, isn't that just like most folks? We get saved, and Jesus is on the inside, but on the outside, we still got work to do. You know, I mean, Jesus is still working on me. And so, you know, we've got to get folks saved, but then we got to get them discipled. So anyhow, with that, we're going to pray. I'm not going to preach, but we're going to go ahead and pray and let our brother come on up here, Brother Seth. Let's give him a big hand clap. I'm telling you. So, Father, in Jesus' name, we thank you, Lord, this morning. Jesus, we recognize you. We thank you, Lord, that you live big inside of our hearts. And we pray that this day, Lord, as you live big on the inside of us, Lord, that we'd be able to take, Lord, who you are to the entire world, Lord, to accomplish the Great Commission, because that's what we're here for today, God. And we thank you for that in Jesus' name. Lord, I pray that you bless Seth as he ministers to us. Lord, as he leaves to travel back, Lord, just bless every connection that he has. And so, God, we thank you. Give us ears to hear, Lord, and the grace to obey what we hear today. In Jesus' name, amen. My brother. Let's give Miracle Place a big hand clap on the front end, because they have opened their doors. They feed us. They do everything. I mean, look, if you need anything at all, just see Brother Ricky. I mean, if you need your car note paid, your house note paid, you know, just whatever you need, he'll take care of it.
I am so glad I came, Brother Ricky. We need to sit down at lunch, have a discussion. I got some things we need to work out.
Look, in all honesty, Seth flew in probably about 3 years ago. He's an air conditioner man, and I was working on that building over there. We needed air conditioning. When he saw it, he just said, I don't think I can do anything except to just leave you like a $6,000 offering so you could get an air conditioner yourself. And then he flew back out. But I mean, no, I was glad he left the offering. And so I just showed him one of his air conditioners that he bought that he's never seen. He saw it today. So,
Yeah.
so thank you, brother.
Absolutely.
So Seth is the guy that y'all need to talk to if you have some financial.
Back then, I was an air conditioning guy. Now I'm a preacher. Don't talk to me. Broke it is. The cash flow is definitely different. As you guys know that. I believe this with everything in me. I believe in the concept of sowing and reaping. But I think sometimes, so often, we get focused on we sow in one field, we should reap from that field. But a lot of times we sow in one field and we reap from another one. So you got to make sure every time you get an opportunity to sow, because you never know where God's going to let you reap. So when I came down here 2.5, 3 years ago, first time I met Brother Ricky, it was because Josh Hanna from Compassion Church had introduced us. Me and Josh were talking about some stuff. I was a pastor of a church. I say of 50 people. 50 people is like on Easter. You know how preachers do. We give our Easter numbers. We were a church of 35, and we had been that way for about 2.5 years, and all we did was outreach. We did sidewalk Sunday school through our communities. Joined up with Compassion Church, started learning how to intentionally grow the kingdom, how to intentionally go out and reap a harvest. It's really, Bishop Ricky talks about fishing all the time. What it is it's fishing with intentionality, and then you fish with nets. So the first thing you got to do is you got to learn what your fish like to eat and fish with that. So often in the church world, we want to fish with what the fishermen want to eat instead of what the fish want to eat. So you got to reach them with what they want. Like when I go catfishing, I fish with chicken livers. I don't eat chicken livers, but the catfish likes chicken livers, so that's what I put on the hook to catch them. We're looking to catch fish that are lost in the world. So we're going to use whatever we have to, whatever bait we need to catch those fish, those that are lost and far from God. It's all this is systematic fishing. It's the difference between being a hobby fisherman and a commercial fisherman. A hobby fisherman goes out and he enjoys the relaxation. He hangs out on the side of the pond or on the water and sleeps a little bit, naps, hopes he catches something here or there, gets excited when he does, and he's surprised by the fact he actually catches a fish. A commercial fisherman is expecting to fill his nets every single time he goes on the water. He's paying attention to the phases of the moon, to the currents, to the water temperatures, everything, so he can intentionally get as large a harvest and catch as possible. We need to be commercial fishermen. I think it's very poignant that Jesus brought his first disciple was a commercial fisherman, someone who intentionally knew how to fish with a purpose. So we're going to fish intentionally. I want to talk to you about some stuff. Pastor Josh, I think, was here last month, and or maybe a month and a half, 2 months ago. I'm going to go over one or two of the things he talked about because I believe you repeat stuff until it's repeatedly getting done. So we're going to go through that, and we're going to talk about how to be intentional with everything we do. I don't like wasted motion. I like to be efficient. Right now, the church, we went from 35 to 800 in May. Now 16 months. We grew by over 800 people in 16 months.
How many of y'all?
Yeah. And here's my favorite thing about that is we didn't just grow from church switching. 70% of the people coming through our doors were either unchurched or de-churched. They hadn't been in church in over a year and a half to 2 years, or either they had never been in church. So our church looks a little rough. It's a little rough around the edges. Like Bishop Gordon said, you get Jesus on the inside, the outside still needs some work. The outside of some of my folks still need some work. But that's okay, I do too. My job's not to clean them, my job's to love them, and Jesus takes care of the rest. So our lobby can be a little rough sometimes. 2 Sundays ago, the cops were there 3 times during one service. Hey, that's excitement. Did we get them saved? You know what? Here's the truth about that. One of the cops started attending our church. It's true, which we have a drug and alcohol rehab center just like Bishop Ricky does here. And out of that, about 25 to 30% of our police forces started attending our church because they're seeing lives changed, and they want to be a part of that. So even the sheriff in our town now attends our church. So God is actively doing stuff. He's genuinely building his kingdom, but he does it because we are intentional. Make sure we want to hear what you say. That's right. Especially when you say good stuff about me. Make sure that gets on. Make sure that gets recorded. There we go. So there's one key strategy we use for growing a church, and it's called waves. And waves is just about being extremely intentional. 3 times a year, we have 3 major waves. Anybody know what those 3 waves are? 3 times of a year, you have major waves. Easter is absolutely a wave. That's a natural wave in the church world. What's another one? Christmas. The back to school is about right in the fall. Now, Mother's Day is what we call a mini wave. And so we get a bump in attendance, but it's not something where we put all of our focus. So here's what I want us to think about in our heads. 3 times a year, you need all hands on deck, all out, the best you can put out there, no questions asked. Can we pull that 3 times a year? Yeah, we got 52 weeks. 3 of those weeks, we need it to be all in. 70% of our growth came from the waves. In that 800, 70% came from a wave. So we're currently running between 750 and 800. It's where we settled out through the summer. Our last wave, our fall wave that we just finished up, we had 2,360 people come through our church that Sunday. That is insane amount of number. Are we going to retain all those? No, we're not. But we'd have never got that guest flow and had the opportunity to connect with all those people without this strategy. So we have to be very intentional in how we're doing it. If you try to get the people in your church to invite guests every single week, it'll go flat. They just won't do it. Hey, bring a friend, do it every week. They're not going to do it. I don't care what they tell you. They're not doing it. Why? Because anything that happens all the time becomes the norm, it becomes commonplace, and it becomes unimportant. So 3 times a year we focus heavy on guest flow. So here's what we're going to look to. We're working towards the peak of the wave. And for a wave to be successful, it has to be an event that takes place on a scheduled Sunday service. If you pull out that piece of paper right here that you got when you came in, we're going to go through this, and I'm going to give you all the information. That way you can go back over it and review it. So our first blanks on there, there are 3 times throughout a year
Seth,
they're most
real quick,
effective. Yes.
if you didn't get a handout, would you raise your hand so we got one right here. So do we have some more handouts right there? All right, Destiny, did you get one? All right, good. Praise the Lord. All right, good.
Yeah, I want to make sure everybody's got these because this will be stuff, it'll be a lot of information today. You'll want to go back and revisit it. So there are 3 major waves. You got Easter, Christmas, and fall. And the tips for an effective wave is a wave occurs in a regularly scheduled service time. So often churches will have these huge events, but they'll have them on a Friday night or a Saturday afternoon. The key is you want people coming into your campus, into your doors at the time of a regular service. That way they feel comfortable when they come back. Right. It's building that habit in. So you want to make sure those things take place at a regular scheduled service time. It's where churches have missed it for a long time. We'll have huge events. We'll get a lot of guests. But because it's not at a regular service time, we'll miss them. We'll never see them again. They just come in for the event, then they're gone. And a wave is most effective when you have a lot of people involved. Get as many volunteers as possible involved in the event. Here's why. If you put on an event, you, your staff, your core team put it on, everybody comes to your event. If they help with it, they're inviting everybody to their event. It's ownership. Come to my church. Come see what we're doing. You got to come see this production we're putting on. Man, I'm in it. Come look at me. Be stupid on stage. Anything you can do to get more and more people involved, the better. At Christmas time especially, you better have kids everywhere. Every single child you can get near a stage. Why? Because they're going to bring mama and grandma and aunts and uncles, and nobody can tell a 5-year-old, Grandma, you come watch me at church. Nobody's telling them no. It's how you draw guest flow. And grandma will make sure all the aunts and uncles come and everybody else shows up. Get as many people as possible involved. And that's not just on the day of. That can be building sets, props, being in the parking lot. Any single role you can give them, get them involved. And in a way, presents an opportunity for guests to connect with a lead pastor. No matter what the event is, there better be a connection point with the pastor. A moment where there's a heart moment between the pastor and all the people that are there. A connection. So those are your first 3 blanks right there. Now, here's what you have to do on the front of a wave. For a wave to be successful, you have to start 4 weeks out. In the church world, we are really bad about planning ahead. We kind of wait till the last moment and wing it. It's not effective. You won't reach near as many people. Start 4 weeks out. So you got 4 weeks leading up to the day of the event, the day of the wave. And so you got 4 weeks. Let's just do Christmas. You got 4 weeks before Christmas because that's the next one coming up. So 4 weeks before Christmas, which would be the last week of November, the week right after Thanksgiving, you start promoing this thing, and you start building it up. Here's the first thing you're going to do. At the end of that service, 4 weeks out, you're going to start talking about and casting vision for what we're going to do, the impact we're going to make on our community with this event, with our Christmas event. Then you're going to have a card. And this card is going to have a place for 5 names on it. And you're going to put one of those in the hands of every single individual that walks into your service that week. And here's how that looks. At my campus, we hand them out as soon as everybody's coming in for the service. We run 3 on Sunday morning, so everybody that walks in gets a card. Service goes on, and everything in that service is going to lead up to an invite moment. It's going to be very evangelistic. I'm going to talk to them about the people that are lost, hurt, and broken in their world and their circle of influence. I don't need them inviting strangers. I need them inviting people they know, they love, they care about. Because strangers not coming. Somebody you already have a relationship with, your circle of influence. They're sitting there holding the card, and I'm going to get everybody to stand up and hold their card up. And we're going to have this conversation. Think of the 5 people in your life you know that are lost and far from God. people that you love, that you care about, that maybe they're in your family, maybe you work with them every day, but you know they're not where they need to be with God. How much do you love them? Do you love them enough that you'll commit right now that you're going to write their name on that card, and for the next 4 weeks, you're going to pray for them? You're going to personally call and take them out to dinner or lunch or have a moment of reconnecting, and then you're going to personally invite them to come with you. And don't just say, hey, come to church. Say, will you come and sit with me at this event? Or will you come see me in this event, and then meet them outside the building and walk them in? So you take away all anxiety and all fear, and you make it very personal. Do you love them enough you're willing to ask them to come with you? And then if you don't, if you're not willing to follow through and invite them, don't put their name on this card. Like, if you're not going to call them and follow up and make sure that you give them a personal invite, don't write their name down. Because that's your commitment that you're going to follow through with that. Here's our commitment to you. As a staff, we're going to pray over them every single day between now and then. We're going to pray that the power of the Holy Spirit starts convicting them, that starts preparing their heart and gets them ready for this moment, and that God is doing what he does and you do what you do. You go invite, God's going to prepare it. He's going to make them ready. And we're going to pray over them every Monday night at 6:30 when we have prayer meeting. Those cards are going to be laid out on the altar. We're going to pray over them. Our staff is praying over them daily. And when I say staff, don't think paid. We broke 500 before we had anybody in paid staff, anybody at all. Everybody was volunteer. So when I say staff, that's just my core leadership. If you'll write them down, we're going to follow through. We're praying with them, and we're going to combine. If one can put 1,000 to flight and 2, 10,000, we're going to get on this thing together. Then I want everybody to fill their card out. We're going to bring the lights up in the sanctuary. We're going to take a moment for everybody to write down their 5 names. And then I'm going to ask everybody to stand up and bring them to the front and lay them on the altar. And we're going to pray over them together right there. It is a powerful moment when an individual, a mama's bringing a card with her kids' names on it. Or a little 7-year-old is walking up with a grandpa's name on a card. That moment when the congregation comes together and says, these are the people we are believing God is going to bring into this house and bring salvation to. This is not just going through the motions. This is spiritual warfare. And don't take it as just a church growth strategy. This is where you go and invade the darkness. Write it down. We're intentional. This 90% of the people that will come to your church will come because of personal invite. Personal invite, somebody they know, they love, they have a relationship with, invited them. Personal invite.
Now, Seth, do you have 2 cards that they fill out where they leave one for the church intercessors?
I don't, because I figured they know those names because they wrote them down. Now, there are people that will do that, and they'll do 2 cards so they can take one at home, put it on their refrigerator to remind them.
Yep.
Not a bad idea.
Yeah, we normally do 2.
I love that.
Yes.
We do 1 because of the ones I want them to leave there. Can they have 2? Absolutely.
Yes.
So if you want to give them 2, that's phenomenal, and they can double it up. What I do is I take those, and we'll actually make copies of that and put them in a spreadsheet, and I make sure they go out to all our intercessory prayer folks. Everybody's got a list of those, so that gets reproduced and put a lot of places. Here's the other thing that happens at 4 weeks out. All of our social media stuff goes out. And social media, a lot of times we think of as the enemy. It is a powerful tool to reach people with the gospel. You can reach thousands very quickly. But even with social media, it's not just a, hey guys, y'all come. Get your people in your congregation to put out a personal invite on their social media outlets to the people that see their stuff. Make it very personal even from that perspective, and get as many people in your congregation as you can to do a video invite to this. Because they may write down 5 names that they personally invite, but they may get 400 people who see their invite on social media. We'll have banners that go up in our communities. Now, with us, we're out in the middle of nowhere. So when I talk about middle of nowhere, I'm talking 4 miles from the front door of my church to the nearest gas station. Nowhere. Our population around our church, the community we're in, is Axton, Virginia. Population's 1,000 people. We almost double our community on Sunday morning because we're having church service. People drive over an hour and 20 minutes to get to our service because we're just in the middle of nothing. So location doesn't mean anything anymore. People jumping in a car and driving an hour, they'll do that for anything. But understand, putting banners up in front of my church or a big church sign makes no difference. I'll challenge you. It probably doesn't make any difference no matter where you're located. People don't pay any attention to it. It's got to be relational. Everything in Christianity is relational. First the natural, then the spiritual. It's always relational. So we're going to send out social media. And I will promise you this, with your waves, if you're not excited and your key leadership isn't bought into what the wave is about, nobody else is going to be excited. If you believe in it, they'll believe in it. So we're going to cast vision on the impact we're going to make at week 4. We're going to do the personal invite cards. 4 weeks out before the wave. Personal invites. We're going to start building some momentum. And every week, the only thing I'm announcing, the only announcement I'm having, I'm not talking about women's ministry, I'm not talking about a Royal Rangers, I'm not talking about anything else going on in the church, but this. That's it. If you have divided focus, you have no focus. It is all we're working for. Why? Because we're about reaching the lost during those 4 weeks. That is all we're looking for, is reaching people who are far away from God, who do not currently attend and need to be connected with a body of believers. That's all we're focused on. Are there other things going on in the church? Yes. They're not being announced from the pulpit on Sunday morning. One thing. And it will be talked up and spoken of, and every sermon for those 4 weeks is evangelistic. That sermon series leading up to Christmas is all about reaching the lost, reaching the hurt, the broken, those who are in the highways and the hedges, compelling them to come in. That's all we're talking about for 4 weeks. And we start ramping it up the closer we get. So like with Christmas, this year at our campus for Christmas, we're doing the ungrinching of Christmas. The Grinch is being re-released in November. It's going to be a huge blockbuster that's coming out. We're tied in with that. We've got the Grinch that's coming. We're going to tie it in with Herod, the original Grinch, constantly trying to steal Christmas, steal joy. We're putting that whole thing together, leading up to it for 4 weeks. We're actually talking about the hurt, the brokenness, the pain, the things that steal our joy. And then the day of, we're breaking out the Grinch. We're building full Whoville in the sanctuary. And you think, oh, that's huge. It takes a lot of people. No, 3 people did it with some Luan and some paint. It doesn't take a whole lot. It just takes some creativity. But as we start getting right here, these next 2 weeks, I've got 3 Grinch costumes, and I got 3 teenage guys, and they're going to go to every daycare, every business, everywhere in our community, and they're going to have on a compassion shirt when they go, and they're going to invite all the kids everywhere they go. At some point in time, we got to quit playing defense and start playing offense. It's time to go to the darkness. The crazy thing is we did this for Easter, and we had an Easter bunny dressed up, and he had on a shirt that said #It's not about the bunny on his shirt, and it said Compassion Church, and we sent them out to the daycares. We had other churches in our area wanting our bunnies to come to their daycare. I'm like, you realize they're inviting kids to our church. That's the objective. We don't want to take people that are already connected with your church. And they said, no, the people that come to our daycare would never attend our church. Come get them. I said, okay. So guess what? We were at First Methodist Daycare with our bunnies. These 2 teenage guys are just reading to the kids. And anyway, and we actually had the bunny to teach the salvation message in the children's area. So you take the wealth of the wicked and use it for the righteous. Instead of fighting tradition, use the culture to build the message. We had Santa Claus at Christmas last year. Santa taught the kids about the real gift and meaning of Christmas. You know how powerful it is when Santa Claus says the gifts I bring are superficial, but the real gift is Jesus Christ, and how he drives that message into those kids. So instead of fighting it, you're stepping off of it. But it's about being creative and realizing what we're trying to do and make an impact. But for 4 weeks, it starts ramping up. It gets more and more intense. This last week right here, these last 2, every single day there's a new social media invite coming out from one of my staff members or team members at the church, and they'll show snippets of what's going on coming up to this event. So for Easter, you think everybody does an Easter egg hunt. Well, we didn't do Easter egg hunt. We had a bunch of bunnies that we contacted a local farm. They brought the bunnies out, so all the kids got to play with bunnies and got to take their pictures with their bunnies. Out in front of the church in a little grassy area, they play with bunnies. That was the draw, and then we had cotton candy. Cost us nothing. The farmer brought them out, let them play with the bunnies. We only had to pay for the ones they killed. And just kidding. I mean, it may have happened. But it's those kind of invites. And what happens is every time a parent took a picture of their kid with the bunny, we had a window frame that went around it that said Easter at Compassion. So those pictures started going everywhere, and it's constantly putting out there, hey, this is where this is taking place. So our services grew. Every one got bigger than the one before because it was advertisement that was going out. And you think, man, you're marketing Jesus. Yes, I am. Unashamedly marketing Jesus. The world needs him. I'm not marketing something they don't need. It's something they absolutely need. I want to get them to a place where they can have an encounter. The demoniac in the Decapolis. Jesus comes over, sets him free, casts the demons out of him, leaves. The next time he comes back, there's 5,000 men on the hill. Why? Because the demoniac went out marketing. He went out telling everybody what Jesus did for him. It's the same thing. We're making Jesus famous. The point is every week you're intentional and you're constantly referring everything back to this invite card. So at week number 3 weeks out, make sure you guys are praying for the people on your prayer invite card and you're reaching out to them, having conversation with them. Maybe your relationship has been strained, you've been a little distant, you've been busy. Make sure you're checking on them. Talk to them. Don't ask them anything the first time you talk to them. Just check on them. Rekindle that relationship. Then this week, make sure you're inviting them. This week, make sure you got a plan in place already where you're going to meet them, where you're going to sit, where you're going to meet them in the parking lot. Maybe you're going to meet them for breakfast that morning and then come to church together. Make sure you've got a plan in place and it's all lined out. Because if not, people will forget. Constantly reminding them. Then the day of, we have one objective the day of. One objective. And it's guest cards. But the way we know this has been successful is that the day of the wave, we double attendance. And I promise you, if you do this, you will minimal double your attendance. Our last wave, the fall wave that just went, we had 2,369 people. Our average church attendance coming into that wave was 736. That's triple. Yes, absolutely.
Could you explain the fall wave? I understand Easter and Christmas, but the fall.
This one is completely made up. We talk about kids going back to school. That's when people start coming back to church. They kind of get back in their routine. Summer's over. We just make up an excuse to get them back in church. So you can do multiple things. So here's what we did for ours is we had Heaven's Gates, Hell's Flames come in, the traveling drama. That's what we did for our wave. We've got other churches I've worked with that they did a big, huge fall festival, but they did it on Sunday morning, and they brought everybody in, then they did something after church. All they're doing is trying to drive attendance, and so they can get information so we can follow up with them. And I've got a couple other examples, too. Yes, sir, Bishop.
I just wanted to give another example. Like, you don't even have to spend a lot of money. We would run a water slide, do dinner on the grounds, and bring everybody in, water slide for the kids, set up volleyball and games and things like that. Absolutely.
It's not expensive. Like our Christmas wave, I think our budget for our Christmas wave is going to be about $700. And that's at a church of 736 people. So that's all we're going to spend for Christmas, I think is what our budget is. So they're not high dollar events. Now, fall cost me more because we had Heaven's Gates, Hell's Flames in, and that drama cost some money. But I have a church in Maryland. There I'm working with a Hispanic conference. And what they did one day is they have people from about 6 different nationalities that attend their church. So they had a Nations Day. And so they got everybody to invite all the people that they were related to, that they were kin to from their country, and they all wore their shirts with their flags on it. They had flags in the parking lot. They did a big deal afterwards. They all brought food from their country that was like staples. And so everybody tried everybody else's foods and dishes. They more than doubled. They almost tripled their attendance that day. So it's just an event that's different, that's out of the ordinary, that people will get excited about coming to, but it's at a regular service time. All it is. Yes, sir.
Here we go. When my name is Altair. I come from Brazil, but I live here now. How can I use this strategy? Because I know we have a lot of the Brazilian lived around in this place in Baker, in Zachary, in Dennis Spring. I have the meeting with these Brazilian people. They didn't work very hard because they made money. Did have time to visit church. How I use this strategy to invite these Brazilian people to come to the church.
How do you use it to invite the Brazilian people? All right. How many Brazilian families do you already have connected?
Hey, nowadays, about the 25 families.
You've got enough right there. That's like a core group already. Those 20 to 25 families, how many other people do they know from Brazil?
Because sometimes we have the meeting. For example, last Saturday we have the meeting in the friend's house.
Yes.
Okay. Everybody stay there around the Brazilian barbecues.
Yes.
The barbecue there, and they talk about a lot of things. In that moment, I think, I need to invite these people to go to the church to know about the Jesus, because a lot of the things don't know about Jesus but don't follow him.
Right. And so what we're doing here is we're trying to create events that you can invite them to that aren't. It's not saying, hey, go with me to church, because they may not be interested in that. Hey, come see this drama I'm in. Come see this play I'm a part of. Come see this thing I helped build. It's all about relationships. So if those 25 people you already have relationships with others, that's core of everybody you need to invite. If all of them invite 5 people, 25 times 5. You see what I'm saying? Now all of a sudden your base just grew drastically. And if you do that every time you have a wave and you have 3 a year, it doesn't take but a minute. You've got a huge number of people that you're drawing together. Now, when you get them together, do you talk about Jesus? Absolutely. Absolutely you do. Do you use a different bait? Absolutely. Because they're not interested in Jesus at this point. They don't even know, like you said, they don't know about him. They don't know what they need from him, especially coming out of the Brazilian culture. A lot of them, only exposure they have is Catholicism.
Because for a Brazilian, the Christmas is a very important day.
Right.
It's a wonderful date in Brazil.
Yes.
But here, the Brazilian people have done only stay in the house, the party.
Yep.
But I think it's possible to come these people to before the party at home, have the party about the spiritual parties at the church.
Yes. Yeah. And look, use an excuse to get them together. Food. You talked about the fact they stood around the Brazilian barbecue. Have it at the church, and invite people that aren't from Brazil that hey, come taste a part of our culture. This is how we would cook it. This is how we would prepare it. Now all of a sudden you're building interrelationships and you start expanding that impact. It's just about taking the things people already like and using it to bring them to the place of Christ. Things people already accept in their culture. Food is always a good excuse, but don't do it at a time that's not a normal service time. Feel free to get them to come together and say, hey, we're going to get together and then we're going to have this big barbecue. While the barbecue's cooking, we'll sit down and we'll have a devotion or we'll have a time to talk about it, and then we'll eat right after, because that way they get in a habit of gathering at a set time. Now, that service time may be a Thursday night if that's when your regular service time is, but it needs to be at a consistent time. Yes, ma'am.
Hey, hang on just a second. Say what, Destiny?
I was asking the Brazilian man, are you the pastor of the church or a member?
He's a member of this church, and we're going to reach the Brazilians right here.
I know God give me the future. I don't know. Please.
Brazilians. And that's how you can invite them into a place that you have been assigned to, and let each one of them make their foods or make their gifts, and y'all come together, and then in somehow you engage the message of Jesus Christ in that. Like with the bunnies, you may be a cook and not a pastor. I don't know your occupation, but at that time you use that to usher in Jesus, and then now you open the doors to the Miracle Place Church.
Absolutely.
Hey,
They work very, very hard
Yes.
because they come here to make the money.
Right.
Because Brazilians don't have opportunity for them,
Yep.
and they stay here for the work. Sometimes, yesterday, I talked with my Brazilian guy. He wake up 3 a.m.
Yeah.
and he work in New Orleans,
Yep.
and near to the Gonzales, and come to at home about 7 p.m.
Yes. And so here's what's got to happen with that.
Yes,
Same thing that happens in the American culture. You have to make them reprioritize. What will happen is there comes a point in time when you have an encounter with Jesus Christ that now getting to know him and being in his presence becomes a priority to you. And yes, I'll work, but there's a day when I won't. I'm going to stop this day and I'm going to encounter my king because he's worthy. And it's a process.
look, let me just say one thing concerning what you would use as the draw, because you got to get creative.
Yes.
One thing is there's a language barrier.
Yep.
And so some kind of way I would put together some kind of English, a Brazilian. In other words, from the Brazilian language, you're going to learn English language. So some kind of way, and I'd center that around the Bible too, you know. And then also I'd have a way to, I'd start to work on being creative for them to integrate into American culture in some kind of way, make a living, because their goal is that they're trying to make a living. Brazilian, they don't have the money that we have, so some kind of way I'd get creative with American culture.
Sorry.
No.
This guy asked me, in your church to have the school, the English school for foreign?
Yeah.
I don't know, because in my mind, if it's possible, I don't know, the church opened a small school, the English school for foreign. It's possible invite this guy
Right.
after the work to learn English in the church. If you know about the Jesus, I think is a
All
good strategy.
All you're doing is fishing with what he's already wanting. It's the same concept. The concept is you don't try to give them what you know they need, which is Jesus Christ. You try to give them what they already know they want. And then in that, you give them Jesus Christ. If he wants to learn English, you find an opportunity to, through learning English, he gets Jesus. Same thing with this. The world wants Christmas. The world wants the presents and Santa Claus. They want the hoopla and the family interaction. They want those moments of connection. They know they want that. So you offer them that so you can give them Jesus, which is what they really need, which is where they'll really find that peace and fulfillment. Easter, they know they want their kids to have a picture with the Easter bunny. They know they want this expression of looking like a great parent. Look at what I did with my kids today. What they don't know is they need Jesus Christ in their life. So you use one as the bait. You bring them in. There are 10,000 different ways to do it. Now, if you do that, if you offer the school where somebody can go from Spanish to English or from Portuguese to English, whatever their translation is, if you tie that with a service so that they're getting Jesus Christ in it and it's a consistent basis, now you're connecting them. It's all about the connection process. So you need to make them a part. So what we're shooting for with any of these waves, as creative as you get, is we're shooting for them to be able to regular service time and double your attendance.
Hey, I remember the last seminar that guy said you take the physical to bring them into the spiritual.
Absolutely. It's
You hit
always the
physical
natural first.
Yeah.
Absolutely it is. It's the natural relationship you have before you have the spiritual connection. Jesus taught that over and over again. Go into a town, find a man of peace. Stay there. If he'll keep you, stay in that one house, share meals with him, and then you share the gospel. Jesus, when he met Peter, it's a physical connection, a relational connection before you start making an impact on the spiritual. But what we've got to do is if we're not intentional on the physical relationship of building people and bringing people in to build relationship with them, we never get an opportunity to share the spiritual. in the church world, we never did that in order. So we would do stuff like, let's go out and do sidewalk witnessing. Well, that sounds great. Anybody ever had real good success with sidewalk witnessing? No, all we did was upset people. It's true. Man, they're pushy. They're aggressive. They're trying to tell me I'm wrong. Why? Because we never had a natural or a physical relationship with them. We never knew each other before we tried to give them something spiritual. It's no connection point. What we're doing here is trying to make a relationship with as many people as possible. The more people you know, the more influence you have, the more people you can give Jesus Christ to. Double attendance the day of. That's how we know that the 4 weeks leading up to it have been successful, is if we double the attendance the day of. Now, on the day that everybody's come, now we've got double our attendance. Now what's got to happen? One is you got to have great first impressions. When you've got all these visitors and guests coming to your place, you got to have great first impressions. What does that look like? Let's walk through this for a moment. Smiles all around. If you're not happy to be there, anybody ever been to a church and they've got this one woman that's opened the door every single day for a year? She hands you a bulletin and she looks like somebody put sour milk in her cornflakes. That wasn't what I wanted to say, but I went with that. I don't know y'all that well. And she's just miserable looking. And she's standing at the front door because that's her spot. And everybody that comes in gets miserable. If she's that excited to be here, why am I here? First impressions also doesn't start at your front door. First impression starts at the street. It starts at the road. So if you can get people up around the road that are smiling, got signs waving at people, looking enthusiastic to be there, happiest people go in my parking lot. They're part of our Wow Factor team. We'll go through those details in a minute. First impression must be killer. People better be excited. They better be waving. They better be friendly. So I'm going to walk y'all through what that looks like real quick. Just give you a breakdown. And then I'll share with you some hope. So we started implementing all this stuff when my church was 35 people. 35 people, you don't have a whole lot of options for your first impressions team. But here's what it looked like. So the first thing that happens when you come up, and this is under our connections. We have a connections department. We have a whole group of people that their only job is to connect folks. It's the one area most churches don't have, connections. And so I have a connections director. My connections director's name is Tasha. And Tasha became our connections director when we had 35 people. And she had a team of her, Tasha, and her husband, Scott. That was her whole team. And I said, okay, Tasha, here's what I need. I need somebody at the road, waving, smiling. I need a parking lot greeter, somebody to say hey to everybody when they're getting out of the car. I need somebody outside the front door to open the front door and say, man, we're glad you're here, to greet you. Understand if they're a guest, we want to give them a gift, which at that point in time was a little cellophane bag of candy like Hershey Kisses and some peppermints, because we didn't want guests to have bad breath. And I didn't even get a chuckle out of y'all. Then they would come on in, and then if they were a guest, we would show them around the facility, show them where the bathrooms were, give them the whole tour, and then seat them in the sanctuary, make sure all that was good. I had 2 people to do all that. And you think, how did 2 people do that? Well, we only had 35 people, which means on a given Sunday, we may have 1 or 2 guests. So Scott's out in the parking lot, got a sign that says, welcome home, or you belong here, or come on in, and he's waving and smiling. When a car would come in, he would run through the parking lot and yell at them, hey, good to see you this morning. And then his wife, Tasha, would be standing at the front door, and she would greet them, hey, guys, good to have y'all this morning. She would open the door, and it's important. I want the door greeter outside opening the door, not on the inside pushing it open. Here's why. I grew up in a Southern household where Southern hospitality was important. So if we had guests coming, my mom cleaned everything in the house. She would even make us move the refrigerator and clean under the refrigerator. Mama, I don't think the guests are going to look under the refrigerator. But it was a big deal to her when guests were coming. Everything was spotless. And she would have all kinds of extra food around and snacks, and she would have dinner cooking. And when they pulled in, she was outside on the porch to meet them. She went outside, hey, good to have y'all, talking to them all the way up, walks them in the house, kind of show them where everything is, get them comfortable. That's exactly how church ought to be. We ought to be so anticipating guests that we're outside waiting on them. So I want the door greeter outside the door opening it up and saying, come on in the house, not on the inside pushing it open. Pushing it open is cold. Here's the other thing. If they're outside, they can greet them from a distance. And so it's not an awkward walk up to the door. Hey, guys, good to see y'all this morning. So glad you're here. They open the door and let them walk in. Intentional. Tasha would walk them in. And then she would show them around. And Scott would drop back and open the door. So he would go wave at them, run back. That's all they had, 2 people. Then what Tasha did is anybody who was very relational or who would talk back to her or would engage her in conversation, she'd say, hey, do you mind helping me next week? I really need somebody to open this door. Yeah, I'll help you next week. Okay. And so now she is adding to her team. Now she added one more person. All I need you to do is open the door, be friendly just like I was friendly. She'd walk them through a little training through the 4 squares of delegation, which you'll get some point in time in this. And then she would keep adding pieces until eventually Tasha was never in the parking lot. She was now in the lobby. Then she built a team in the lobby to say, hey, get you a water or a coffee, show you around. Then she was no longer in the lobby. Then she was in the sanctuary. And she was making sure people found seats, and they had somebody show them a seat. Why is that important? Give me just a second. Why is that important to have somebody show them a seat? Anybody been to a church and you sat in somebody's seat and they ask you to move? Me too. I was a guest speaker at a church, and sanctuary was empty, and I'm sitting right where you're sitting. Second row, first in. I have a woman come up to me, and she doesn't even speak to me. She just stands there and goes, look at her. Nobody else is in the sanctuary. I'm there early because I'm the guest speaker. She kind of grunted at me. I said, oh, I'm so sorry. Am I in your seat? I stood up. She still never acknowledged me, set her purse in the seat I was sitting in, and walked out. So I moved on over. I smiled and sat over there. They introduced me as the guest speaker, and I walk up on stage. They hand me the microphone, and I walk right over, and I smile. And her eyes got about that big, and she wanted to crawl underneath that seat. And I had a real good conversation with her from the pulpit. I was friendly. I was polite. I was to the point. Somebody's going to die and go to hell over your seat. They walk in this morning. If I was distant and far from God and that had happened, and I walked back out of here not knowing Christ because you wanted to sit in a certain seat, let's think about that. At what cost is a soul? When you can take fear and anxiety out of a guest as soon as possible, the likelihood of them staying and actually hearing the message multiplies drastically. Because I'm not sitting here worried, am I in somebody's seat? Oh no, is somebody going to ask me to move? Am I going to be embarrassed? I mean, it's even a biblical principle. Jesus says when you go into a feast, don't sit at the highest seat and then somebody asks you to go move somewhere else, but wait and be seated humbly, and then if they move you up, great. If we can take that fear out of people, anytime you walk into a new church, it feels like going into a middle school cafeteria the first day of school with a plate full of food, and you're just looking for somebody friendly to sit with, and you're awkward and uneasy. It makes it very hard for you to feel the love of Christ. But if initially, as soon as you come through the door, somebody greets you with a smile, oh yeah, you're new today, let me show you how to get around, let me show you where the bathrooms are, let me get you some coffee, some water, let me get you to a seat. It sounds simple, but we get very caught up in our routine and we miss it. If we can show them a seat, they now have permission to sit there and they're not nervous or anxious if anybody's going to come ask them to move. Yes, sir.
I have another question.
Yes, sir.
1 week ago, I'm studying in LSU. I have a lot of the 40 people in my class.
Right.
Sit there, my side is the Chinese, and the teacher asked me to speak about the personality, the man. I would like to speak about him.
Yeah.
I choose Billy Graham.
Yeah.
Then during the next day, I made a PowerPoint about Billy Graham in the show, in the class.
Yes.
About the love of Jesus. This guy, look in the Hannah I end my presentation, he looked for me and asked, who is God?
Yep.
I look for this guy, and he asked me, who is God? He's a Chinese guy.
Yep.
How is, in my mind, I think, how is to speak this guy about the Son of the God if he don't like, he don't know is God?
Yes.
I invite him to take the coffee in the library, in the LSU library, has a coffee, the cafeteria inside there.
Yep.
in that moment, I stay with the Yushin is a Chinese, and the another guy is an Indian, sit around the table. I'm a Brazilian, speak my my terrible English for a Chinese and the Indian about Jesus.
Yes.
In this guy. Oh, God, give me a fire in my heart. How is possible to speak in the college?
Yes.
For the foreign students don't know the Chinese, the Asian is a lot of the Asian in the LSU, Korean and the Chinese in the another country. How is possible to speak the Jesus for these people because they know He is God?
And that's why it's so important to build the personal relationship first. Because if you brought one of them straight into church here on a Sunday morning, they wouldn't know what you were talking about. So it has to be personal first. It's exactly what we're working through here is the fact that it has to connect on a personal basis, but I want to be able to connect with them as many people as possible, because if you're the only one that connects with an individual, and so they're coming to church, they sit with you every time, they don't know anybody else, they hadn't spoken to anybody else, and then something happens and you quit coming or maybe you move, they're disconnected. You want it to look like a spider web. So I want as many people as possible talking to an individual before they ever have a seat in my sanctuary, because those are opportunities for relationship.
At the end of the coffee, I ask him if it's possible. I pray for him.
Yes.
He told me, okay, it's the first time he listened about the God and about the Jesus in that time. Only is my experience in the LSU. I would like to share with you about the difficult for us inside of another country, for another people to teaching him about the God, because they know who is God.
Yes, and it's a process with every single person you meet is an opportunity to share with them, and you don't know where they stand. Like, you don't know what background they come from, but it's also why it's so much harder for you to reach somebody you don't know or don't have a relationship with. It's so much easier for us to reach people in our circle of influence, which is what we're actually trying to train our church to do. Because for so long in the American church, the pastor has been the one that's responsible for reaching all the lost. It's not really what our role is. Our role is the equipping of the saints for the work of the ministry. So this is the equipping of the saints. We give everybody defined roles and places. Tasha, it was a nurse. She's an RN. She started showing up at my church or attending my church. But Tasha did not have a specific role and a purpose, so she wasn't reaching people. Now, Tasha has a team of 48 people, I think is her team number. That's 48 people that have a distinct role every single week to reach people with the gospel. Those 48 people, one, wouldn't be at our church because they didn't have a reason to be. But two, they wouldn't have relationships. Now they've got relationships all over the place, and they're growing in Christ. The crazy thing is some of those 48 people started serving before they ever got saved. I had people parking cars, they didn't know Jesus personally. Why? The relationship built for them to get to a place they fell in love with the Jesus they saw in Tasha, and she made the introduction. It's a personal relationship. It's a personal exchange. Tasha had 48. Tasha started off with 2. She had 48. When Tasha started off with 2, our children's pastor was Adam. His wife, Brooke. He was our children's director. You know how many he had on his team? 2. Because at 35, all the kids could go in one class. What did he start doing? He started recruiting. He started building a team. Adam's team now is about 76 strong. And the reason I know these numbers is because we went over them the other night in staff meeting. We have our staff meeting. We had it Sunday afternoon because I was going to be out of town. We usually have it on Tuesday nights. And so they were giving me their team numbers. The church did not grow to this number, so now we have this number. The church grew to this number, so now we have this number. Understand what I mean? The more people you get involved serving and a part, the more people they'll bring with them. Why? Because now it's not your church, it's their church. And people will invite people to their church. This is where I serve. This is where I invest. This is where I believe. This is where I have relationships and connections. You ought to meet my amazing church family. The more people you can get involved, the more people you have in your church, the more impact you have, the bigger your waves get, and you keep the cycle going. Here's how you connect them. Connections director, Tasha, she started recruiting. What did she have? She started with a wow factor at the street. She has a wow factor. Wow factor is just something that makes you stop and say, I've never seen that before. We are not above putting somebody in a chicken costume out in front of our church. We'll put somebody in an Easter bunny costume. We'll put somebody out with Mickey Mouse hands. We did a big sermon series called Despicable Me. Despicable Me was about the minions, but it was about how despicable you are. We had inflatable minion costumes running all around our parking lot. There is nothing funnier than a 255-pound, 6'4" man in a minion costume. And you think, why would he do that? He's the first Jesus people see. Because it takes the edge off, takes all the nervousness out. It makes them calm. Everything that happens in your parking lot and in your lobby is the preparation of the soil for the moment the seed is sown. But if you don't prepare the soil, the seed will find hard ground. It's all leading to the point of the message. So everything flows. It's not just random stuff in the parking lot. It ties in with what the sermon's going to be. We did a sermon series about heaven. So we put these little funny angel wings and halos on all our parking lot folks. Same 6'4", 255-pound man in angel wings. That's a little comical too. And we poked fun at the church and what we have made heaven into. We've made heaven into streets of gold and gates of pearl, and yeah, that's true, but we made it superficial. Heaven is not about a superficial place that's rich. Man, I can find wealth here on earth. Heaven is about being in the presence of a God who loves you, and it takes away all the barriers between you and the feeling of that experience and that love. So it all prepared it for the message, but it was intentional. The day of this wave, this is how we start building a guest flow where we get double the attendance. The day of the wave, everything we're doing is about one thing. It's a guest card because we want their information. We want a guest card. Here's why that's vital. How many of you in the room got saved the first time you heard the gospel? I do these trainings all over the place. You know how many hands I've seen go up? None. Not a single one. Not a single person I've encountered got saved the first time they heard the gospel. The guest card gives us a way of connecting with them to keep them tied into the body until they get to the place they receive the gospel. Hearing the gospel does you no good. Receiving the gospel changes everything. We want a guest card. Here's how we do that. We do it by making these events ticket driven. We give tickets to everybody in the parking lot. Got to have a ticket to get through the front door. On the back of the ticket, name, email address, who invited you, telephone number. That's it. Their address, their physical address isn't important. Nobody gets mail. If you send mail out from your church, they take it and chuck it. Nobody opens it. They get too much spam, too much junk mail. Nobody even looks at it. Emails they'll get, telephone number, because we will text them and then call them. And we want to know who invited them. Here's a secret. If you find out who invited your guest to get them there the first time, who do you think may be the most likely candidate to get them back there a second time? So now I have all the names of the people who invited them. I get them to invite them again. Here's a statistic for you. If somebody visits your church one time, there's only a 30% chance they will ever come back. Is that true? Pastors in the room, you feel that? Man, we have a lot of guests, but they don't keep coming. 30%. If you can get them to come back a second time, there's a 70% chance they will keep attending. The second trip, the second time somebody comes to your church, it's a 40% increase in the likelihood they'll stay attending. So we are focused on the second time through. Focused on it. We get a guest card. It kicks off a process where we follow up with them within 48 hours. And we try to do it within 24, but 48 at the longest, we contact them. We are going to make a contact. So we're getting a guest card that day so we can start the follow-up process. We're going to have an over-the-top experience. Whatever takes place that day is going to be the best experience they've ever had in church. There's going to be the friendliest people, the most smiles, they felt welcome and a part. And there's something biological about people. You ever been around somebody and you thought, man, they just gave me a bad feeling. I just got an uneasy feeling about them. There's the central cortex of your brain that actually feels that actually senses feeling. There's a statement that people will not remember, but like certain percentage of what you say is really low. But they'll remember how you made them feel. How you make somebody feel is critical because we don't have language for it. Like the central cortex of the brain doesn't have language. It can only feel and sense. So you can feel when you're welcome. If people genuinely feel welcome in your building, they may not even be able to put words to it, but it'll be, man, that's the best experience I've ever had at church. Doesn't mean it was the best lights, doesn't mean it was the best smoke, doesn't mean it was the greatest music, but they felt like they were loved and cared about. That's what you're looking for, is them to have that place of feeling. Yes, sir.
Hey, hang tight. Coming to you.
Most times on Sundays, I do a lot of greeting, like
Yes,
you just said. But after church,
Yep.
I find the same people and say, did you enjoy yourself? Was the sermon what you expected? Will we see you again? I do this a lot.
And that is the key. Look, my number one growth engine at my church is the parking lot when people coming in. My number two growth engine is my parking lot when people are going out. It's the same process that greets them as they come in. They go exactly opposite on the way out. The last thing I want them to hear is, man, it was good to see you this week. Can't wait to see you next week. There's an expectation somebody's going to meet me here. Absolutely right. Why? Because everybody wants to be important. And if you can work with your parking lot and greeter teams to start learning people's names, dude, that means the world. Somebody shows up the second or third Sunday and somebody calls them by name. Everybody loves to hear the sound of their name. It used to be the pastors would try to learn everybody's names. That's going to hold you to about 70 people max. That's about all one person can keep up with. So you genuinely have to have a team to be able to make people feel that way. All right, so we're looking for a second-time visit. We've got our guest cards. We're walking through that. And then we want something else to happen the day of. The day of, I want to set a hook to try to get them to want to come back for that second visit. What does that hook look like? I want to promo the next sermon series that's coming up for these next 4 weeks. I want to talk to them about a moment where they want to come back. Let me give you how sneaky we are. When I say sneaky, we're just intentional. Christmas. Huge Christmas event. We got all these people come through. We connect them up as far as they've come through. We've said hey to them. We've been good to them. We doubled our attendance, which means we did a great job leading up to the wave. Then we get guest cards from them, which means we got all the information we need to follow up. Now I'm going to set the hook. I'm going to talk about the upcoming sermon series, and it's going to be connective, and it's going to be provocative. It's going to be something they want to hear about. So I'm going to set the hook for that. Man, you don't want to miss this sermon series that's starting off this next week. Here's what it is. Here's the sneaky part. And next week in kids' church, they're having Nerf gun wars. All the kids that came for Christmas, because out of these right here, there's a huge number of them were children. They're having Nerf gun wars. Yep, and we're going to give everybody little Nerf goggles, and we're going to buy bullets. You bring your own guns. We're going to have a ball, and we're going to talk about spiritual warfare with the kids, but we're going to do it while you're playing Nerf gun wars. What that does is now the kids, today in America, who drive the decisions in a household? The children do. Look at how much money, time, effort, and energy is spent on kids' sports. Why? Because the kids are driving the household. If the kids want to come back to church, they coming back. After them, it's the mama. After that is the dog. Then the cat, then the daddy. Yes, sir.
The highest paid guy at McDonald's is the fellow that invented the Happy Meal.
Absolutely he is, because he drives their business. I can't stand McDonald's. I think it tastes like styrofoam with ketchup on it. But I go there. Why? Because I got a 9-year-old. Daddy, I want a Happy Meal. Ain't nothing happy about that meal, son. But he loves it. It's marketing genius. Why? Kids draw it. If you will understand when you have these big events, the more kids you have on the stage, especially for Christmas, the more draw you have in. And then if you get the kids wanting to come back, they better have a phenomenal experience in your kids' church and then have something big coming up for them. I got a couple other secrets to that, but we're going to set the hook. And we're going to set the hook by having an event the week after. Now, with Christmas, it's a little different. We'll skip a week and then do it. Why? Because the week after Christmas is the lowest attended Sunday of church, no matter what you do, no matter where you go. First Sunday of the year, that one Sunday right after Christmas is always the lowest attendance, no matter what you do. Now, we'll have a guest meal that Sunday a lot of times because of all the guests that came on Christmas, but your regular attenders aren't going to be there. Just understand it, because everybody's traveling. They're exhausted from the holidays. Don't fight it. Skip it, and then start with the next week. After Easter, though, the week right after Easter, we have a big kids event, laser tag. And that stuff sounds, man, that's expensive. You can rent laser tag guns and stuff. They'll send them to your church. I think we spend $130. They send all these kits in. The kids play laser tag in a big classroom. And you always tie that in with a spiritual truth. It's always about a truth. But here's why you're so focused on kids having fun. Church parents, when kids come out of Sunday school or out of children's church or whatever they're in, ask this question: what did you learn today? Parents that don't come from a church background ask this question: did you have fun today? And we're fishing for the lost. So if their kids have a great time, they're coming back. The greatest thing I can ever do for a child is to give their parents the gospel. And if I have to do that by entertaining the kids until the parents have an encounter with Jesus Christ, that's what we'll do. Greatest gift I can ever give them. Doubled our attendance. We got our guest cards going. It's a process. So often in church world, when we have a big event, a Christmas or Easter, everybody will go on social media, post about how big their attendance was, talk about what a great day it was, and then everybody goes home and takes a nap. In the church world, we think, whew, we did good. Look at how big Easter was or Christmas. I'm done. That's halftime. I remember the Super Bowl a couple years ago. The Atlanta Falcons are playing the New England Patriots, and at halftime, Atlanta had wore them boys out. The problem was they thought the game was over. They took a nap. New England came back and won the game. Don't stop early. This is just halftime. The day of is halftime. Yes, sir. Yes.
Hang on.
On the three big waves, is it exhaustive to do more than the big three waves? Like if you were to do something every other month, is that too much?
It is. What you'll do is you'll lose the power of it if it becomes very commonplace. Now, we do small waves in between and mini waves, but they're departmental. That doesn't require the whole church. Three times a year, the whole church is involved. So when Christmas is going on, not only is there something amazing taking place in the sanctuary, the kids are a part of that. So the kids have been practicing for 4 weeks leading up to it. You brought up a good point. Let's talk about that for a second. If little Johnny's been practicing for a dancing on stage for Christmas, and for 4 weeks, every week he's going home telling mama, daddy, grandma, teacher at school, hey, I'm practicing for this thing I'm going to be in at church. You got to come. We would even send invites stuck on the back of the kids. When they would get picked up from children's church, we'll put invite stickers on the back of them. Don't forget to invite your friends and family to come see little Johnny dance, whatever. And we'll put those stickers on the back of them, and then we'll get the kids to fill out the same 5-name card.
So between Christmas and Easter, there's probably about 6 months. When you do something in between there, just you don't promote it as big as you would?
It's departmental, right. We don't go over the top. Here's why, because if not, I'll burn my volunteers out.
Okay.
And I need them to give me everything they've got for 3 times a year. And then my departments can do stuff like we'll do a big student push. We'll do a children's push. We'll do those a couple of times a year. But then you've also got other stuff that naturally falls in there. You've got a Mother's Day. Mother's Day is a big mini way for us. A lot of times our Mother's Day attendance will actually match our Easter.
Okay.
But it does not require near the effort, and we don't have as much focus into it. Mother's Day, you got your children are doing huge stuff for Mother's Day. They're usually making a craft, and they're making it 4 weeks out. That's not just because we want to give Mama a nice craft. We want those kids telling Mama, you got to be there Mother's Day. I'm making you something. And you do those things. Now, Father's Day is a lost cause. Father's Day in June, parents and families are on vacation. You can work and put all the effort you want to it, and you'll just burn your volunteers out. In the summer, look, the first year we did this, Josh Hanna and Conrad Lowe were telling me, you're killing your volunteers this summer. Y'all need to rest. Matter of fact, June is called our rest month. We don't do anything. And when I say that, we don't do anything outside of the normal Sunday morning. It's the only month of the year we just don't. But I didn't listen. And we had a Father's Day event. We had a 4th of July big event at the church. When we got around to our fall wave, my folks were so exhausted. We had a big wave, but we didn't connect any of the people. We didn't grow. So we missed our opportunity because I wasn't smart enough to listen. I did not listen to experience, because I'm not teaching you anything that I learned, that like I figured out. This is all stuff that was just taught to me, and hey, it worked. It was given to me, and I was like, hey, no need to reinvent the wheel. That's working. So it is very effective and productive. And your guest card right here, the information we're getting, we're inviting them not just back to a second Sunday. This Sunday right here, and when you get larger, it'll be multiple times. You're going to have a guest meal. So here's what you're doing. You're going to call every single guest, and I've learned in our society, text them first, because nobody answers a number they don't know. Text them and say, this is so-and-so with name of your church. I would just like to have a quick conversation with you, see what you thought of the service, and just want to talk to you for a moment. When's a convenient time for you? And they'll text you back, let you know when it's convenient, and then you can call them and they'll answer. We have found it is a whole lot more productive and effective that way. If we just blind call people, they don't answer. So if we text first, they'll answer. Once they answer, we'll invite them not just back to the next Sunday sermon series, we'll invite them to a guest meal. Hey, we'd love for you guys to stay and have a meal with us, and we'll fix it right after our service. So for us, we got 3 services, so we push everybody to the 3rd service, and we feed them right after. And it doesn't have to be expensive. Food doesn't matter. For the first year and a half, we did frozen pizzas. Tostinos, frozen pizzas, because we could keep them in the freezer, and sometimes we weren't sure how many people we would have. We could just keep heating them up until everybody was fed. Nobody cares. Pizza and salad. The other thing that happens while that guest meal is going on, and we'll dig into that for just a second in a moment, but that guest meal is taking place. The kids eat in a separate room. Why? Because a family with young kids very seldom gets an opportunity to sit down and eat when they're not trying to deal with their kids. So I have my best children's workers stay, and they have the kids in another room, and we jack those kids up on caffeine and ice cream, and we send them home ripping. We want them crying, not wanting to go home with mama when that's over. We'll break out a bouncy house, and we'll have pizza for them. Then we'll have an ice cream bar, and then we'll give them Fanta shots of it. Here we go. And when we get done, they're bouncing off the wall. Mama, I don't want to leave. You don't think that makes an impression on parents? My kids had such a great time at church, they don't want to leave. I'm going to take them back next week. If nothing else, I get an hour to sit in service where I don't have to listen to them.
He's drugging the kids. Can you imagine that? All right, can we take 5 minutes?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Let
and
everybody,
you have to stop me because I'll keep ripping.
All right. And is that all right, guys, if we just take a couple of minutes? And
I don't even know what time it is.
Man, I don't either. What? Is this good?
Yes. Good time.
Are we learning? Hey, wait, are we growing together? Let me tell you something. I've been trying to do this thing by myself for a long time, and I have realized that I can't do it by myself. I need all of your help. So let's all of us do this thing together. Let's help as many other churches as we possibly can. I don't care what denomination you are. I want to serve the kingdom. The kingdom. How many of you know it's all about the kingdom? And so let's just go after the kingdom. Let's Let's get a cup of coffee if we want, and then we'll come back in about 7 minutes, 10 minutes. Let's do 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Is that all right? All right.